Good morning, all, dear friends, colleagues, dear guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the National Bank of Kazakhstan, I would like to welcome all participants, and I would like to congratulate you on the coming Financiers Day. This Congress is happening on the threshold of the 30th anniversary of independence. The first president, Nursultan Nazarbayev, laid the foundations of the new statehood. In the last 3 decades, they developed the foundations of the statehood. They determined the national border. They adopted the national constitution. They also formed the financial system, adopted our own currency, Tenge. Thanks to all these achievements, we see how our country has transformed in the last 30 years. And we have a new generation of Kazakh citizens. We all see this continuing to strengthen the basis of independence. The current president in September this year determined the main areas for the country's development, which were also addressed today in the president's remark. Like all other countries, Kazakhstan is facing the most severe crisis in this century. There are 3 global challenges. The first challenge is the inflation growth and the inflation pressure with the imbalance of demand and supply in the background. The economy is recovering. We expect that the growth of the real GDP in 2021 will be the fastest in the last 4 years and will total about 5.9% as predicted by IMF. The rapid growth of demand with limited supply has led to high prices for commodity and transportation. The second challenge, which opens new prospects and opportunities, is the rapid digitization of the entire global economy. Under the influence of the pandemic, the transformational processes have brought to the fore new formats of financial services that meet requirements of mobility, convenience, and security. The third global challenge is combating climate change. The head of state devotes a great deal of his attention to this problem, as he underlined today. The sustainable development of the financial sector, as I have said, and the green pivot offers new opportunity. Besides the direct impact of climate conditions, changes in the financial landscape incorporating principles of responsible investment are ahead of us. In March this year, the National Bank adopted the Monetary Strategy 2030, which consists of 3 key areas. These include strengthening the institutional and operational framework to conduct monetary policy. Second, development of the financial sector as an effective intermediary and conductor of monetary policy. And third, further diversification of the economy with increased counter cyclicity of macroeconomic policy. Therefore, for a full-fledged implementation of all monetary policy targets, we signed an agreement on coordination of macroeconomic policy with the government and the Agency for Financial Market Regulation and Development, which is continuing the practice that was first started in 2019.
First is conducting an adaptive monetary policy and increasing its effectiveness. The main mandate of the National Bank is to ensure price stability. During the acute phase of the pandemic, we conducted an expansionary monetary policy to support economic activity in the context of suppressed domestic demand that exacerbated the disinflationary effect of the quarantine tightening measures. Once the economy has entered a positive growth trajectory, we are reversing the monetary policy stance amid growing pro-inflationary risks. The increase in inflation observed today is caused equally by both external and domestic factors. On the one hand, the aggravation of supply-demand mismatch in global markets leads to disruptions in supply, rising transportation costs, prices of raw materials and food products. The growth of food prices in the world has been the highest in the past 10 years, while metals prices increased 1.5 times during the year. The cost of transportation of dry cargo, reflecting the demand for raw materials, has increased 3.2 times since the end of 2019, so before the pandemic, and 7 times compared with May 2020 due to a shortage of containers amid growing buying orders. As a consequence, the external inflation backdrop is worsening with renewed historical highs. Just yesterday in the U.S., inflation has reached 30-year highs since 1990, reaching 6.2%. In the EU, it is also at a record 4.1%. In this environment, central banks are beginning to tighten monetary conditions. Since the beginning of September this year, 24 central banks have raised their key rates. In Russia, a key trading partner of our country, since the beginning of the year, the rate has cumulatively been raised by 3.25% up to 7.5% against the background of the 5-year maximum inflation rate of 8.1%. Amid high inflationary pressures, the Fed and the ECB began to roll back stimulus measures. In September, the ECB announced its intention to reduce the volume of bond purchases. On November 3, the U.S. FED announced starting December, it was beginning to roll back its quantitative easing program by $15 billion monthly. And the negative external inflation background is aggravated by internal imbalances in some commodity markets and income growth as the economy recovers, for the leveling of which, together with the government, urgent steps are taken within the framework of the anti-inflationary response package adopted in September. Joint efforts are yielding the first results. The annual inflation rate stopped growing for the first time in the last 6 months in October, and food prices, their growth slowed down from 11.5 to 11.3%. As I noted at the meeting of the government, the number of regions with accelerated annual inflation for the first time decreased from 13 to 7 out of, there's 17 regions in Kazakhstan. In general, the economy of Kazakhstan still maintains steadily high inflationary environment. Significant growth of prices for food products supports high inflation expectations of the population, which in October reached 10.3%. And taking into account significant abnormal growth of inflation in summer months, since July of this year, the National Bank started conducting a disinflationary monetary policy, having increased the policy rate 3 times in total by 75 basis points from 9% to 9.75%. In our opinion, the adoption of systemic and preventive measures to eliminate imbalances in the commodity market is part of the anti-inflationary response package, which we divided into 2 parts. There's operative before the end of the year and measures that are in the midterm to reduce our import dependency. So we believe that this will help us stabilize the inflation near the upper boundary of the target corridor of 4 to 6% in the second half of 2022. And we expect that the slowdown of inflation will occur against the easing external inflationary pressure, a gradual decline in global food prices, and a recovery of global supply chains. For sustainable price stabilization in the economy, it is important to implement an initiative to improve the coordination of monetary and fiscal policies through the legislative implementation of the counter-cyclical budget rule adopted by our president by the end of the year 2021 and start applying it in 2022 onwards in the formation of the Republican budget for 2023 to 2025. And the new rule will limit the growth rate of government spending in a guaranteed transfer from the national fund to a level not exceeding the amount of contributions from the oil sector at a conservative cutoff price, isolating the business cycle from commodities and reducing the pro-inflationary pressure in the economy. A return to market financing of the economy with the elimination of price distortions in the financial markets is one of the most important priorities for increasing the effectiveness of Kazakhstan's monetary policy. In 2020-21, within the framework of implementation of the anti-crisis initiatives of the president of our country, the National Bank made its contribution and allocated 2.3 trillion tenge to stimulate business activity, support employment and infrastructure development. And owing to these initiatives, Kazakhstan's economy returned to pre-crisis level, and its growth for the last 10 months reached 3.5%. And I would like to elaborate now on the involvement of the National Bank in the implementation of programs to support the economy. The National Bank financed and launched a program of concessional lending to business entities to support entrepreneurs in the most affected sectors of the economy. And during the program's implementation, more than 1,500 businesses got loans worth over 1.1 trillion tenge. As we can see today, almost all sectors of the economy are in the growth zone, so the program will be completed by December 31 this year. In order to provide employment and prevent the unemployment growth, the National Bank took part in the implementation of the employment roadmap by financing local executive bodies on a repayable basis to a total amount of 900 billion tenge. The program will also be completed this year. The market mortgage product Baspana Hit, which was launched to foster long-term housing lending, will also be completed this year. As of today, almost 600 billion tenge has been allocated within the framework of this program. By instruction of the head of state, the National Bank will continue the implementation of the Economy of Simple Things program and the program of Preferential Mortgage 7-2025. As of today, the loans for 940 billion tenge have been already granted within the framework of the Economy of Simple Things, and 7-2025 out of the 400 billion has been allocated out of 1 trillion. And we believe that by the end of 2022, all of the limits provided by the National Bank will be fully used, and we will be able to complete these programs too. And as the goals of economic diversification and reduction of import dependence are achieved, the National Bank considers it important to gradually move state support to the economy to market-based measures in order to improve the effectiveness of monetary policy and reduce inflationary pressures. Preferential financing that does not depend on the market rate creates a distortion of the value of money in the economy and competition in both the financial market and the business environment. And the government also recognizes these factors and plans to adopt a 5-year roadmap to gradually move away from non-market instruments of state support that distort the real value of credit funds. In order to improve the effectiveness of monetary policy, the National Bank, in accordance with a previously announced timeline, is the first to begin withdrawing from state programs to support the economy, planning to discontinue its participation before 2025. However, given the pace of economic recovery, we do not exclude early completion of the main programs by the end of 2023. An important dimension in the development of market financing is the improvement of the government securities market and shaping the market yield curve. This will allow to establish a benchmark for rates in the longer-term segment and launch the process of market funding of long-term projects. And since last year, the National Bank and the Ministry of Finance intensified their joint cooperation on increasing the attractiveness of government securities market for foreign investors. I'd like to thank my Ministry of Finance colleagues for that cooperation once again, and we can say that perhaps this is one of the first indicators of coordination in our policy, and the results we achieved this year. Since the beginning of the year, the portfolio funded by foreign investors has grown more than twice. The work on inclusion of government securities in the JP Morgan Global Emerging Market Bond Index is underway. At present, our government securities have been placed on the radar of inclusion in this index, and we believe that we have chances, at least in 2023, to be in that index for developing countries. And next year, it is expected to include government securities in the FTSE Frontier Emerging Markets Index. That will happen in spring, which will also give an additional impetus to build a income curve. In an effort to facilitate investors' access to Kazakhstan's market, Kazakhstan's post-trade infrastructure was improved to a world standard within the framework of the Central Securities Depository, in line with Clearstream, an international clearing organization. And further institutional development of the Central Securities Depository is intended to transform from a local recording-keeping center into a regional settlement and clearing hub. And to implement this goal, the depository's efforts are focused on building on flexible infrastructure with the appropriate IT modernization, providing access to a wide range of stock market operations, and including the functions of an organizer of trading on the over-the-counter market and a corporate actions hub. The Kazakhstan Stock Exchange has significantly expanded its offerings of various types of financial instruments, including mutual funds and ETF index funds. And November 15, a foreign equity trading floor will be launched. Against this background, the number of retail investors in the stock market increased significantly, and over the last 2 years, the number of retail accounts increased by almost 70%, and as of November 1, amounted to more than 206,000. The technological modernization of KASE trading and clearing systems has been completed. A central counterparty function has been introduced in all markets, which reduces risks for all trading participants, contributes to an increased liquidity on the exchange market. In the near future, the exchange will focus on attracting SMEs to the stock market, further increasing the activity of retail clients and developing the infrastructure of financing sustainable development projects. Third is digitalization has become one of the key drivers of financial market recovery around the world. In many ways, Kazakhstan is moving at the forefront of the financial industry's digital agenda. Under the influence of digital services, we have observed a significant increase in cashless payments in the country. For instance, within 5 years, the volume of non-cash payments for the population has grown 26-fold, and the share of payments via the internet and mobile services has reached a record high, rising from 22% to 83%. It is important not to miss the momentum of change and support further digitalization of the financial industry through the development of the following key areas. Equally accessible digital financial market infrastructure is a priority of the National Bank. Its important components are the national payment system and the digital biometric identification platform that are being created. These reforms will raise the provision of financial services to a higher quality level. The updated digital infrastructure will become more accessible to all market participants and will make it possible to create a new generation of financial services faster and cheaper. 63 central banks around the world are exploring the introduction of national digital currencies. Together with market participants, the National Bank has also launched the digital Tenge pilot project. We see significant potential for the project to increase the availability of payment services and reduce the cost of transactions in the economy. And the digital Tenge platform may also open up opportunities for the creation of fundamentally new services. At the same time, it is necessary to assess in detail possible risks and benefits from the issue of the national digital currency. In December of this year, a white paper on the results of the pilot project will be published, which will cover the outcomes of the technological experiment, the results of research, and discussions with market participants and the expert community. In a rapidly changing economic environment, it is important to ensure high-tech interaction between regulators and market participants by creating a unified financial market business data platform. The credit registry, together with other financial market data sources, will form the basis for a unified data warehouse, the financial data lake. This will open up new opportunities for the application of advanced analytics. I'm talking about AI and ML for supervisory and regulatory purposes, and will simplify regulatory compliance for the market. The introduction of RegTech and SubTech will ensure the transition of data-centric supervision and regulation and reduce market costs, in which we're doing actively with the Agency for Regulating the Financial Market, and we hope that in mid-next year we'll be able to offer to the market a quality new product. And part of the work work we're doing together with AFK and the National Bank, and so we're underway. We also see a steady trend towards the creation of platform business models and the formation of ecosystems in a financial market, which Yelena started talking about. And ecosystems are blurring the boundaries between industries, with consumers being able to receive a range of different services on a one-stop shop basis. However, their further development is also a challenge for regulation. Ecosystems are the future of financial markets, but they must be built in an open manner in the interest of aggregable industry efficiency. Consumer personal data has become a critical asset for the financial market. It is important to ensure non-discriminatory access data to shift the focus of competition to processing efficiency. Consumers should have full control of the access to their data and be assured of its security. Given the increasing risks of cyber attacks and fraud, it is important to pay special attention to cybersecurity and privacy protection. To ensure these principles, the National Bank, in cooperation with other regulators, will create a legal framework and appropriate infrastructure for data exchange and storage, including we'll be working on API standards and open banking infrastructure. Digitization is also improving regulatory interaction with consumers of financial services. The Kazakhstan Deposits Insurance Fund has piloted an electronic guarantee payments portal. As of today, there are no equivalents of such an online reimbursement system in the CIS, and for the convenience of citizens in the market, an omni-channel interaction is being established through a single contact center. As part of the business processes digitalization, the National Bank is working on the implementation of a unified integrated automation system of asset and risk management in order to comprehensively address the tasks of improving the effectiveness of asset management and financial risk control. The emergence of the best-in-class investment management solution for various asset classes at the National Bank will help accelerate investment decision-making and reduce operational risks, which ultimately leads to increased efficiency, including in the management of the gold in foreign currency assets, the National Fund, and Unified National Pension Fund assets. And fourth, for further development of the financial market and raising external investments for the development of the country's economy, the access to the financial market of Kazakhstan will be extended to the participants of the Astana International Financial Center. Taking into account successful international experience of functioning of financial centers, the IFC Act on Currency Regulation, developed with direct participation of the National Bank, and it comes into force in December 1 this year. It determines the list of financial services that can be provided from the AFC platform throughout our country, taking into account the provision of financial stability of the Kazakhstani market. As I already mentioned, providing financial stability of the internal market of Kazakhstan, it has been provided. Actually, we have done quite a bit of work. We spent 2 years in order to coordinate, but we believe that the capabilities for AFC that are available now will foster stability and also foster the development of AFC itself. Now, fifth, the development of a green finance market is a strategically important area of development. The global market for ESG-based sustainable bonds is growing rapidly. Just starting 2019, the market has grown more than twice. The global ESG investment boom is having an impact on Kazakhstan as well. For instance, 3 green bonds issues worth 34.2 billion Tenge have been listed on Kazakhstan Stock Exchange. The legal environment infrastructure for the development of the green finance products market continues to be intensively developed. And the National Bank, in cooperation with the agency, is also taking a number of measures to further implement ESG principles. In 2022, it is planned to develop recommendations for the implementation of ESG principles by financial institutions. And also by the end of 2022, it is planned to introduce requirements for internal risk management systems and corporate governance system to account for ESG factors and related risks in a strategy and business model of financial institutions. In the medium term, it is planned to make a transition from voluntary disclosure to mandatory disclosure of ESG activities of companies in compliance with international recommendations on the Kazakhstan Stock Exchange and the Astana International Financial Center. The large-scale transition to mandatory disclosure of non-financial information will allow investors' ratings agencies to assess financial instruments for their ESG eligibility for inclusion in their investment portfolios. In addition, the National Bank plans to create a special classification for ESG portfolios. Dear guests, friends, and ladies and gentlemen, we have come together after a long break and are slowly beginning to return to a normal life. Of course, the consequences of the pandemic will remind us for a long time of themselves, but I wish that this does not affect our communications in any way. And the National Bank directs all its efforts in conducting a transparent monetary policy, ensuring financial stability, and creating a modern digital infrastructure of the financial market with equal access for all its participants. I would like to sincerely congratulate everyone on the National Currency Day upcoming, the professional holiday of the financial sector workers, as well as on the forthcoming 30th anniversary of independence of our motherland. The main holiday, I think, for each citizen of Kazakhstan. I wish everyone all the best, good health, good luck, and to achieve your goals. Thank you very much.